Right, afternoon, everyone. Apologies for the few-minute delay. We just had some slight tech issues, but they should all be solved now. I'm Annalise from Sentalk, and this is our Sen Explained Information series. I'm really pleased to welcome Sarah Templeton today on a discussion point that I am extremely interested in myself. Sarah is a celebrated author, coach, advocate, campaigner, all bells and whistles and many more things to add to the list. Thank you for being with us today, Sarah. Really looking forward to getting into the discussion on rejection sensitivity dysphoria and talking about emotional regulation. So I will just turn it over.
Okay, hello everybody. Sorry if I've got a slightly husky voice. I didn't realise I got a husky voice till I started speaking, and now I've got a husky voice. I do apologise, not quite sure what's going on there. Just if people who haven't met me before, just to give you the quick sum up of who I am a qualified counsellor and a qualified coach and a CBT therapist. That's kind of my background. And then it's nearly 2 years ago now, I wrote the book, How Not to Murder Your ADHD Kid, Instead Learn to Be Your Child's Own ADHD Coach, because I realised so many parents were desperate to understand their children, really desperate, some of them, but they didn't understand how ADHD brains worked. So I wrote that book. You can see probably behind me loads of copies of that going out to eBay and Amazon constantly. And I've just written the follow-up for teachers. So that's who I am. I'm kind of now considered an author, which is brilliant because I'm passionate about writing, because that way I can spread the word to more people. So that's what I'm doing. So the second book is for teachers, and that's coming out next month. Anyway, what we're here today to talk about is two things, but they're very closely connected. That is emotional dysregulation and rejection sensitive dysphoria. Anybody who's done a little bit of research on ADHD has probably come across those two phrases before. And a lot of people get them muddled up, actually. Even my counselling supervisor got them muddled up when she was talking to me about them one day. And I said, no, they're very separate, but I can explain them. So if we start with emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is caused by the area of the brain, which is in here, top left. I'm not scientific, so I don't expect scientific words. I gave up science at 13. But the bit of our brain that is supposed to regulate emotion simply doesn't work. Yeah. So this emotional dysregulation thing means that, quite simply, an ADHD person cannot regulate their emotion. And when we say emotion, we often think crying, tears, upset. It's not. It's all emotion. So it can be anger, frustration, irritation. If you think about young boys, and I always say there are exceptions. There are exceptions to everything. But very often it's young boys who cannot regulate their emotion. So because they can't express their emotion and they're feeling it very strongly because they can't regulate it, this is why you'll get 3-year-olds who are punching people or throwing things, or 6-year-olds who are beating their mother. I've had clients like it. I've had clients who are very young and punching mothers. This all boils down to emotional dysregulation. They cannot, not only can they not regulate their emotion, their brain often doesn't know the correct emotion, or should we say the appropriate emotion for the situation. So when I said that to a client one day, he was only about, I think, 14. He was the one who was punching his mother, actually. When I said this to a client, and he said, is that why I cried when my dog died and I didn't cry when my nan died? And I said, yes, that's exactly it. Our brain doesn't necessarily know the appropriate emotion. So one example of mine is that I can cry very easily over music. If a particular song comes on and there's something going on in my life that relates to that song, whack, I'm in floods. So I can be in tears for what other people think be a ridiculous reason. I've heard that song 3,000 times before. But if it comes on at a time when I'm particularly dealing with an issue that is upsetting me, the music can make me cry very quickly. That's my brain not being able to say, you've heard this song 3,000 times before, Sarah, it's perfectly fine. No, the regulation is all wrong. So I'll get very emotional over music if it particularly relates to something that's going on now. Something else massively important to talk about with emotional dysregulation is it's way worse during puberty. So I can remember very well when I was in my sort of 13, 14, 15 years, I would be sitting in a chair feeling perfectly okay, and then have this, what I would describe as a wave of I'll call it depression, but it's not completely depression, but it felt like depression come over me. This absolute wave of misery and feeling really fed up and cheesed off and upset and just not knowing why. And literally sitting there thinking, what's happened? Why am I miserable? What's happened? And I would sit there literally perplexed thinking, what's happened? I don't know why I'm feeling like this. Why? And then half an hour later, it could be the opposite. I could suddenly be euphoric, but like feeling really happy. Like, my God, my life's going brilliantly. I'm so happy. And again, I'd be thinking, what's happened? Why am I feeling like that? What's happened? Now, since my ADHD diagnosis, which came many years later at 51, I now look back and think, that was what was going on. It was your dysregulated emotions. And they were way worse during my teens. Now, you probably know this, but with women, our emotions can get dysregulated much more regularly than just through puberty. With boys, it's puberty and they're done. With girls, it's once a month, a period time. It's during pregnancy, big time. And it's also during menopause, big time. So that's when our emotions will be most dysregulated. But emotional dysregulation should not be taken lightly. I always say it's a very, very serious thing. And in its worst, at its worst, it means people that take their own lives. That's how serious emotional dysregulation is. It can also cause self-harm, especially in teenagers, because their emotions are just up and down and they don't understand why. They can't make sense of anything. So when you hear that statement that self-harm and suicide are higher with ADHD people, the rate of it is higher, that's why, because of the dysregulated emotion. So it's not to be taken lightly. Yes, it can be just sitting in a chair and feeling happy one minute, sad the next, like me, but it can also be responsible for crime, because boys will suddenly get very frustrated, very angry, and not know how to get that emotion. They won't even know why. This is the thing. So they'll suddenly feel very angry and they will literally go and put their fist through a window or do something. And it's because their emotions are dysregulated and they don't understand it. So the very best thing you can do for your children is help them understand that their emotions might be a bit up and down. And they might, some children don't suffer from this much. They all suffer from it a bit. Some suffer from it massively. So I think the very best thing you can explain to children when they're young, when you do start to see their emotions going a little bit skewed and not really appropriate for whatever's going on, explain to them that's what's going on. It's your brain. It's your fabulous ADHD brain, which is fabulous. Oh, audio is a problem. That's so interesting, because I was having trouble understanding Annalise or hearing Annalise. I wonder if anybody else is having a problem. I've got my volumes turned up full, the microphone's on, everything's on. So let's hope it's just, did you get that message, Annalise?
Yeah, I've had messages from 2 other attendees saying that the audio.
I can only hear you very quietly. I don't understand why.
Okay. Could you, to everyone in the audience, could you just indicate whether or not you can hear properly? Just let us know in the comments box.
I can't see anything else that I can turn on. Everything's on. Mic, camera, everything. Yeah,
a few people are saying it's fine.
Okay.
Some that are having an issue.
Yeah,
I would probably advise people to try and leave and then re-enter.
Maybe.
That might make a difference.
Or what about putting headphones in? That might help? If people have got headphones?
It doesn't seem to be an issue on our side. But just so people know, this is being recorded as well, so it will be very clear. So
brilliant.
If you are having issues, you will still get that.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm really sorry to the people that can't hear, and definitely, obviously, you can hear the recording afterwards. So just going back to dysregulated emotions, take it very seriously, and also understand that a child can't do anything about it. Medication helps hugely here. So whether your child is medicated or not, there could be reasons why they are, reasons why they're not. But if they are medicated, that should help regulate their emotions. It often, especially during puberty, won't eradicate it completely, but it should help them regulate their emotions. I'm on meds now. I was diagnosed at the grand old age of 51, and I've been on meds for the last 7.5 years. And I have to say, obviously, I'm also postmenopausal, so I'm very lucky now. My emotions are now very regular, very, very regulated. But for the vast majority of my life, they were not. And when you've got, if you think about teenage girls for a minute, teenage girls during period times, so particularly beforehand, you know, that week, 10 days beforehand, their emotions can be off the scale. So have a little bit of what's the word, a little bit of acceptance that things are not going to be straightforward when you've got a teenager with dysregulated emotion, especially if they're not on medication, and especially if they're girls around that week to 10 days before their period. They really will be, their emotions will be all over the place, and it's nothing to worry about. It's well, I say it's nothing to worry about. It's nearly always nothing to worry about. Obviously, you've got to keep an eye out when people are, if there's any sign of self-harm or any talk or mention or inclination towards suicidal thoughts. You take that very seriously. But on the whole, if you can explain to your child that their emotions are going to be up and down and all over the place, or jumbled, or whatever word you want to use, in a positive way, they will then understand when it happens. So I know if somebody had explained to me as a teenager, that's going to happen to you, and it doesn't mean you're going mad. It doesn't mean that you are suddenly happy and then suddenly miserable and suddenly happy and you're clueless as to why. It doesn't mean you're inattentively missing things that are happening, and you are, you know, happy, sad, happy, because you're frantically trying to think, why are you sad, why are you happy, and there is no reason. So if you can explain that to your child, that might happen to you, and if it does, it's fine. You know, you can come and talk to me and tell me that you want to kick a cow or you want to throw a chair, and that you're angry and that you don't know why you're angry. Come and talk to me, or talk to somebody, or you know, get it out somehow. It's perfectly acceptable to feel like that, and won't be any judging going on. If you can get that message through to your kids that, you know, it's part of puberty, especially, and for girls, sadly, it's going to carry on during their monthly times. So that's dysregulated emotion for you. Not being able to choose the appropriate emotion helps massively if you're medicated, but I do understand there are some children that can't be. I appreciate that. And they're not going mad. You know, it's perfectly normal, and it will be worse during puberty, because if you explain it to them like this, their hormones during puberty make their emotions go up and down anyway. Every child in the world during puberty, their emotions go up and down. But if you explain to an ADHD child, because their ADHD is connected to a hormone, and hormones are connected to what's going on for them during puberty, theirs are going to be even more jumbled. But I always say to it in a very positive way, this is what makes you special, and this is what will make you achieve more when you get through it. So just bear with it as you go through your teens. We understand what's going on, you know, and be open about it. Let them know that it's okay to feel very strong emotions, and for no reason. You know, that there won't necessarily be a reason, and that's okay. They're not going bonkers. That's their ADHD. Excuse me. So the second part of what we're going to talk about is rejection sensitive dysphoria, which I will call RSD from now on, because everybody does. Now, this is something, if you've got ADHD, you will know about it already. If you haven't, it's very difficult to understand. I have ADHD, severe, moderate to severe combined. So I know all about RSD, and I knew all about it way before I was diagnosed. I just did not know it had a name, but it does have a name. So RSD means two things. Number one, it means ADHD people perceive or take rejection very badly, way worse than other people. And I'll go into that in a minute. But the second part of RSD, this is what other people find very difficult to understand. We can perceive rejection when it's not really there. And we are fantastic at it. We will search for it and look for it and dig for it and go, think, is it there? Is it there? Yes, it is. And now I'm being rejected. But I'll go into that a bit more. So the first bit is, we take rejection badly. Now, I had never understood this about myself either. I was great at taking the mickey out of other people, brilliant with the wit and the sarcasm. Oh, fantastic with sarcasm when I was younger. Yet when anybody did it to me, it felt like daggers. I always explain it like little daggers going into me. It physically hurt. And the very worst thing anybody could do was take the mickey out of me for anything. I just couldn't take it. You know, it hurt. It really hurt. And I took it very, very personally. And this is why a lot of ADHD kids will be called overly sensitive. Yeah. Or wanting to be the center of attention. because the RSD is hurting them. So they'll cry at the littlest thing. And also drama queens. I was called a drama queen. Oh, stop being such a drama queen all the time, because I reacted and things hurt me. You know, things, when I felt rejected, I could get really, really, really hurt, really hurt. And then with girls, I'm generalizing, often that will bring on pain, possibly tears, definitely feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem, not being good enough, all that sort of stuff. So when we feel rejected, it leads into a lot of other feelings and emotions, which are not great ones. So rejection is massively painful for ADHD people, and humiliation, although it's a different thing, we take humiliation as rejection. Yeah. So most ADHD people, again, generalizing, I found the odd one that doesn't mind this, but the vast majority do. They will take humiliation as rejection. The example I use in my book, the first book, is a teenage client of mine whose stepfather wanted to put a video of him on the TV of when he was little. He was, I think, 3 or something. And they thought this video was really cute and they wanted to put it on the television. Well, this 13-year-old was like, no, 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 don't, over and over again. His stepfather did put the video on the television. So you can probably guess what happened next. My 13-year-old client's foot went through the television because he felt humiliated. He didn't want to see himself as a 3-year-old running around in a nappy, being sick or whatever it was. He felt so humiliated that the foot went through the television. And when I explained that to his parents and said, for you, that was okay. It was funny. It was cute. You thought he was gorgeous when he was 3. For him, he was now 13. That was not cute. That was not funny. And he told you, please don't put it on. And that's what was going on there. He felt humiliated. And that's very much connected to rejection sensitive dysphoria. So RSD, I can't begin to tell you how powerful that is. You know, we can feel rejected literally by somebody looking at us the wrong way, by somebody walking past us in the street, not noticing us. We think, oh my God, what have I done? I've obviously upset them. Oh my God, what have I done? I'm a dreadful person. I'm going to lose all my friends now. They're not talking to me. So that probably means the rest of my friends aren't talking. And our minds overthink it and run away with it. So the rejection thing is really huge, that we do feel rejected. And because of ADHD overthinking and rumination, it can take you to loads of places you don't want to go. So it's very important, however difficult or challenging your child is, that you don't make them feel rejected. I'll give you a classic example. If you've got several children in the house and your 12-year-old has been driving you insane all day and the other 2 haven't, and you say to the other 2, oh, come on, let's go shopping and leave him here. Don't do that, because that 12-year-old is going to feel so rejected that they are not good enough to come out with you and the other 2. So be very, very careful that you always include the ADHD child and you don't give them any reason to feel rejected, because, as I say, their overthinking and their rumination will take them to places that you don't want them going. They will feel so bad about themselves. A little bit more about the perception of rejection. As I said, we're extremely good at this, and it would be so much better if we weren't. We can perceive rejection when it's not really there. I could give you 1,000 examples from my own life, but I won't bore you with them. There are so many ways that we can perceive rejection. This is an example. It's not true, but this is an example I used to use in therapy a lot. If you're a group of 3 friends and you find that 2 of the friends are going out together without you, the rejection that we will perceive is off the scale. Now, if you later find out that those 2 were going out on their own without you because they wanted to buy you a present, it was your birthday coming up and they went out to get you a present, that will make it okay. But the perceived rejection that the number 3 would have felt before will be off the scale. So if number 2 and 3, or whichever numbers I've got in a muddle now, I've got dyscalculia, the other 2 that are going, they need to do it very discreetly and not let the first one know that they're going, because I can't begin to tell you the overthinking and rumination and rejection that person will feel. So we will perceive rejection when it's not really there. And it's very, very strong, very, very strong. And it carries on into adulthood as well. Any ADHD person who is diagnosed or knows they've got ADHD, even if they're not diagnosed, they will tell you that the emotional aspect of ADHD is the worst. And this is now in medical papers. They accept that They used to think it was hyperactivity, inattention, impulsivity, and distraction, that they were the 4 main impacts of ADHD. They're not. They're not. It's officially recognized by all the leading ADHD doctors, psychiatrists, all of those, that the actual biggest impact on an ADHD person, child and adult, is the emotional dysregulation. And under that banner comes the RSD, the Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. So they are huge for children and huge for adults. As I said, the medication does help. It really does help a lot, especially with regulating things. But don't be surprised if young children who aren't aware of their ADHD, aren't aware that these are traits of ADHD, if they are very dysregulated with their emotions, and if they take rejection very badly. And something I would say is that if you have a child in school, it's a good idea to let your teacher know that these 2 conditions exist, because the teachers won't have a clue. And they will think, why is he crying again? Or why is he kicking off again? Explain to them about dysregulated emotion and RSD. It will be, I go into schools and train a lot of teachers, and none of them know about this, none of them. But once you've explained, they go, oh gosh, that makes sense. That's why I have to be really careful the way I talk to Tommy, because I've seen that he takes things in such a different way to other people. They'll have realized that the ADHD children take things differently, but they won't have known why. So if you've got kids in school, it's a brilliant idea either to run something off the internet about RSD and emotional dysregulation and literally hand it to them. I've got a teacher's book coming out in a couple of weeks, with issues with the printer at the moment, but it should be a couple of weeks. There's lots in there about dysregulated emotions and RSD. Or talk to your teacher, explain. You know, so let's say you've got a child who's very, very emotional, very weepy, bursts into tears at the drop of a hat. It's worth telling the teacher, look, I now know why this is. It's because of dysregulated emotion. She can't control it. She's going on meds in 6 months. That should help. But until then, can we just kind of go with it? Don't call her a crybaby. Don't call her oversensitive. Don't call her a drama queen. Let her go somewhere, get her emotions out, and then let her come back when she's regulated again. That's a really good idea. And once teachers know this, they take it very seriously, actually. You know, once you tell them that it's part of the ADHD condition and it's now accepted to be the most severe impairment to having ADHD is the emotional side, teachers will take that very seriously, because obviously teachers, the one thing they are trained in is to look out for signs of self-harm, those sorts of things. Once they know the ADHD children are more susceptible to that sort of thing, they will take that very seriously. But it's going to be up to you to tell them, because they don't know themselves. So that's kind of where I'm going to stop. But I'm massively happy to take questions, because I like to leave loads of time in these sessions. We've done it perfectly, actually, half an hour. I like to leave loads and loads of time for questions, and I will answer very specific things about specific children if you'd like me to.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. I think you explained that so well. It is one of those things that just makes so much sense once you actually, you know, unpick it a little bit. It's such a part of every day. As you know yourself, I'm also an ADHD who was diagnosed in later life. And had I have known, you know, earlier on, I could have sort of equipped myself, or, you know, maybe given myself a little bit of leeway, with that acceptance and understanding. And I absolutely echo what you're saying as well about talking to schools, because we speak to a lot of teachers and they're unaware. I mean, we talk in a very woolly manner about emotional regulation, but actually there's so much to unfold, and the experience is very different for a young person. I think it's so important.
It can be crippling for young people, especially when they don't understand, you know, when they don't know what's going on. So just informing them that this is part of their fabulous ADHD brain, always keeping it positive, you know, but it is part of their ADHD. Once they understand it, kids get a lot better. Like that 13-year-old who put his foot through the television. Once I explained to him, this is why you did that. You know, you couldn't stand the humiliation. He's never done anything like that since, because he gets it now. He gets that he's going to feel like that about rejection. And he's like, yeah, you rejected me. I'm not having this. I'm off. And he's fine now, but he didn't know before. You know, knowledge is power, massively.
Yeah, it becomes part of that emotional literacy that every day. We do have a question here, so I'll just pop it on the screen for you, Sarah.
Will help you achieve more when you get used to it. Have you had an example of this? Yes, I have. Okay. I'll give you a very good example. The same boy that I said was punching his mother. Yeah, He used to punch his mother and punch his brother. His emotions were all over the place when he was teens. I had him from when he was 14 and he's now 19. Now, that boy was ADHD and ASD. He had both. He also had dyscalculia. We also think he had dyslexia, wasn't diagnosed. He either had dyslexia or dysgraphia, one of the others. And he had dyspraxia. So he had a lot of issues going on, yeah? And he was very dysregulated when I first had him. He was literally punching everybody. He was punching doors. He was punching his mother, who's only a very little tiny, like size 8 woman. He was punching her. He was punching his brother. His emotions were all over the place. But once I explained to him what was going on, once we got the dose of his medication increased, that was important with him. He was on a way too low dose of his meds. Once we got his meds increased, and he could regulate himself a bit more, he was also getting into terrible trouble at school because he felt different. Of course he was different. He was ADHD, ASD, he had so many of the comorbidities, and he felt so different. But once I worked with him, and once I said, come on, these are all powers that you can use in different directions. And his big dream was to be a footballer. Now, don't forget I said he had dyspraxia, so he was quite clumsy and quite, but it was his dream. So I said, keep working towards that dream. Don't lose sight of it, and just accept all these things as part of your ADHD. This is when I was talking to him when he was about 15. Accept that you're smack in the middle of puberty. These are going to be, sky high for you. But think you're a boy. You're lucky. By the time you're 19, 20, you'll be through all this. So accept that all this is going on now, that you're very emotional and you can't stop punching your mother. We worked on that. We found him something else to punch, not his mother. And don't give up on your dreams. Very, very important that. My big message always to ADHD kids is do not give up on your dreams, because whatever you're passionate about, your ADHD drive will push you through. Now, that boy went for a trial at a very local football club to us here in Buckinghamshire. And I went with him. He said he'd only go if I went because his anxiety was sky high. I went with him. He did the trial and he was signed up to train as a professional footballer. Sorry, I've got a terrible frog in my throat. Just a minute. Excuse me. He's now 19. About 2 months ago, he texted me and he said, Sarah, this is a boy who was failing dismally at the school, failing everything. He hated every subject. All the teachers were horrible to him. It was awful. But when he was doing football, his one passion, he messaged me and he said, Sarah, I just got to let you know I passed my BTEC with a DDM. Now, he was bright enough to know that I wouldn't have a clue what he was talking about. So straight away, the next text came through, went, by the way, that means distinction, merit. And I cried. That's where my emotional dysregulation kicked in, because that kid was failing at school massively. His school didn't understand him. I went and had a meeting with about 10 people at the school. They did not understand a bit of his ADHD, certainly not his ASD, and certainly not his comorbidities. I think they thought we were making it up. But, once you explain to these children that yes, you've got these conditions, and yes, especially during puberty, it's going to mean those emotions can be all over the place, but do not lose sight of what you are passionate about, because it is that one thing that your brain is stimulated by and you are passionate about that you will do well at. And even when he got accepted, his mother was like, oh, well, his English and his maths is going to let him down, he's this and he's that. But the very first day he went in, he actually asked the tutor, are there any other ADHD people on this course? I think there are about 20 boys on the course. And the tutor said, yeah, there are 3 of you. And he told my boy who the other 2 boys were. And so he knew, first of all, that he wasn't alone, that there was the other people that were going to be struggling with some of these issues. And as I say, that boy was not the brightest, bless him. He'd be the first person to say that he hated school, wasn't interested in learning, and the whole thing was a disaster. But put him at that football club where all he's learning about is football, his one passion, and he goes and gets distinction, merit, which means he can now carry on. I mean, this has just blown his mind and blown his mother's mind as well. He can carry on to year 3 and turn that into a degree. And I said, and when you get that degree, mate, we're going back to your school and we're showing that school just what you could achieve. Excuse me. Oh, God. Just what you could achieve if they had only realized that you were going to be very good at one thing. ADHD people don't tend to be good all-rounders. I've said this in my teacher's book. You don't find good all-rounders with ADHD. There's one thing, or maybe 2 or 3 things that we're really passionate about. We're never going to be passionate about all 10 subjects. It's just not going to happen. So it's much better to let the child you know, do go to the classes for the other ones, because obviously bits of information picked up is useful, but don't sweat it. Don't sweat it if he's not going to get brilliant marks in English. Of course he wasn't. He'd got dyslexia or dysgraphia. But on the football field, he was amazing. And he still is, you know, and he's doing absolutely brilliantly. So he was an example of somebody with very dysregulated emotions. It wasn't so much crying with him. It was anger, frustration, irritation. He was a very angry teenager, right from, I would say, I didn't know him when he was 11 and 12, but his mother told me he'd been like that when he was 11 and 12. I had him from 13, 14, and I had him till he was about 16. So I had him for about 3 years. And once I got him to understand that all those emotions that you've got, use them to your advantage. You know, your anger, go and thump a football. Go and do football and get on the football field and punch the life out of the football. And if you have to imagine it's your mother or it's a teacher or whoever's getting on your nerves, kick it harder. You know, use that energy to further you and what you want. And he's a brilliant example. I mean, I've said to him, when you're at Wembley, mate, did you forget me? I'm coming to watch you. But his emotions were very dysregulated, and his RSD was huge. He felt very rejected by school, by the teachers, by his classmates. He had a lot of trouble with classmates because he would say things impulsively. He did something very impulsive in drama once. I really don't think it was that terrible myself. He just said something basically, but a whole gang of people decided that he was evil and cruel and sexist and all this. And so he was rejected by the whole of the drama class, and that destroyed him. You know, he was so down beaten when I had him for the first couple of years. But once we got that focus on the football and nothing else, and I used to say to him, look, maybe you're not going to be Wayne Rooney or David Beckham, but what's to stop you being a coach or a manager or a fitness person or a massage person? If you want to be involved in football, let's just force you towards, you know, the whole thing and see what happens. And as luck would have it, he's now doing very, very well at the actual football. So, you know, in answer to your question, yes, I've got lots of examples of people who've been very dysregulated. But if you can get them focused on that one passion and you can push them to, I've got another very similar story, which I won't go into, with rugby, a boy whose passion was rugby. He's now a professional rugby player. Same thing, in his teens, very emotionally dysregulated, hated school, hated his teachers. Another question. Wondering how to support younger children in school 6 to 8 when parents are reluctant to pursue medication and we at school have come what we've done from a reasonable justice perspective. Very good question. Number one, get them to read my first book, because it will explain why you need to try it. Because parents don't understand. They think medicating is just trying to knock the ADHD out of a child. It's not. Medication is giving them the best chance to learn, the best chance to remember, the best chance to focus, the best chance to concentrate. So get them to do some more reading around why it might be a good idea to at least try medication. As to how you can support them at school, there's a local school here, and somebody who's training to be a therapist to come and work with us. She's a special needs behavioural support person. So the best thing that she's found, and I think this is a brilliant idea, she has I can't remember what she calls it now. It's almost like a sensory room, but it's not. It's just a very small room where kids can go at any time when their emotions are dysregulated, and it's very calm in there. It's lots of soft fluffy rugs and muted lighting, and there's soft music playing. And I think the best way to help very little kids regulate themselves is to have a place where they can go when they can cry, when they can kick a beanbag or kick a punch ball or something and get their emotions out. Because little kids, even 6-7-year-olds, they will have these dysregulated emotions, and what they won't want to do is cause themselves embarrassment and humiliation by acting out, for want of a better expression, in front of other children. So having somewhere they can go is a very good idea, and also having a person that they can go to is a very good idea. You know, if there's like a welfare officer or the school secretary or somebody that they can go to and openly talk about their emotions, and A, know it's confidential, and B, know they're not going to be judged for it, that's about the best thing you can do. You know, have somewhere that they can go and get all those emotions out. Is that kind of what you meant, that person that asked that question? Because that's the best way we found of dealing with it. The worst thing is to make them deal with it in front of other children. because they're going to feel very humiliated, especially afterwards. Does that make sense to the person that asked that question?
I haven't had a response yet,
but
I will let you know. But we've got quite a few more questions.
Okay,
If that's
we'll
all
crack
right.
on. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just easier to pop them on the screen for you.
Right, this is a good one. So daughter 7 is really good at masking it at school due to her anxiety and perfectionism. I'm diagnosed with perfectionism. I know what that's like. That can be crippling as well. Teacher is very skeptical of her ADHD because she's a model student. Is there an age symptoms show up more at school? Yes, puberty, basically. And she's not far off it. 7, that could kick in at 9, 10, can be quite early. Officially, the earliest puberty can kick in is 9 officially, but I do know that people sometimes 7, 8 have even started puberty signs. So, but masking it at school, I mean, that's a whole other subject. But I did that. I masked at school. I never skipped school once. I never smoked. I never did drugs. I did all my homework and handed it in all the time. I was a model student, apart from attitude. I hated everybody. Thought everybody was thick. So it will usually come out in some way. But girls are way better at masking than boys. You won't need me to tell you that. And there's one simple word as to why we're better. Testosterone. We don't have it, or we have much less of it. So when boys have it, they don't mask so well because their emotions flood out of them. Their anger, irritation, rudeness, frustration, whatever, it will just spill out of them, and they don't have much control over it. Girls are much better. We're much better at managing our emotions, and this isn't just ADHD people. This is everybody. Women are better at managing their emotions. So I think with the teacher, there's lots of different things you can do. One, you could literally type up a list of all our ADHD traits, and literally, if you go online and look up ADHD traits, you'll see all the different headlines. You could actually write all the examples of them underneath. I wouldn't show your daughter because I wouldn't think she'd like the teacher knowing this, but you could give it to the teacher and go, this is actually ADHD. So when you see her tidying her pencil in her pencil case and she can't stop, and you tell her to stop, don't do it. Because her perfectionism means that pencil case has got to be exactly right, and all the pens have got to be around the exact right way, and the rubber and the ruler and the this have got to be in the exact right place. And when you've got a child with perfectionism, if you stop them doing something like that, it throws them off completely. They then can't focus, can't think, because they are obsessed with that pencil case, which is a mess, and they want to tidy it up. So if I was you, I would literally go online and Google all the traits that she's got, write the examples of the things that she does underneath, and give it to the teacher or email it. And just say, look, when she does this, it's because of ADHD perfectionism. So just let her do it, because otherwise it's going to give her a ton of anxiety. We get so much anxiety if we can't get the perfectionism thing right. So your best bet is, again, communication. A lot of this boils down to communication. Teachers won't understand perfectionism. They don't even understand it, let alone that it can be connected to ADHD. The thing with perfectionism is that most people with ADHD are very disorganized and chaotic. So when you've got one who's got perfectionism, we can't expect teachers to kind of understand that without it being explained to them. So I would write out a list of her traits or type and give it to the teacher and just say, look, in confidence, this is what she's dealing with. This is what's going on inside her head. So can you just kind of bear it in mind when you're dealing with her? The vast majority of teachers are very accepting of this once they've been told what it is. Until they know what it is, we can't expect them to understand every single condition in the classroom and how to deal with it. So if you very kindly and politely explain, this is what she's got and this is how it will manifest, you'll probably find that I would say 9 out of 10 teachers will be very, very happy to take that on board. You'll of course get one that says, no, she's just got to behave. There are still those out there that no, they've got to behave. Nothing to do with just behaving, we know that. But 9 out of 10 will be very receptive, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Sarah. Any advice for a 6-year-old boy who struggles to regulate his emotions?
What I've said, really, let them come out. Don't stifle them. Don't tell him off for them. Let him have them. Explain to him that it's okay, that he's going to have different emotions and strong emotions. We have stronger emotions than neurotypicals on the whole. So explain to him that he might feel things a lot, but again, positively, so that those things that he feels a lot, he can use those as he grows up to do great things with his life. He might feel, let's say, for example, he feels very, he gets very emotional or feels very strongly about animals that are badly treated. Let's say that, really upsets him and he gets angry about that. Say to him, this might be something you want to do as a grown-up. You might want to go and help in animal sanctuaries, or you might want to train to be a vet or something. This is a good thing. So don't ever think that you feeling strongly about things is a bad thing. It can be a good thing. But as you're growing up as a child, your emotions are going to be up and down, and it's okay. It's okay. Don't bottle them up. Come and talk to me about them. With ADHD, the one important thing is that you let them get the emotions out. The worst thing you can have is a household like I was brought up in. I am the template for how not to bring up an ADHD child. We were not allowed emotions in my house. They were not allowed. You were a child, you sat, you behaved, you shut up, and you talked, you spoke when you would talk. You talked when you were spoken to. That was how I was brought up. Well, I wasn't allowed to feel anger or any emotions at all. So do the opposite to that. Let them feel their emotions. Explain to them that it's okay. And they're going to have a lot of them. And as they grow up, they can use them massively to change the world, to do wonderful things in the world. Even as teenagers, I know a lot of teenagers who are working in refuges, who are helping at animal sanctuaries, who help at, we've got a place around here called Tiggy Winkles, which rescues hedgehogs and all things like that. Loads of kids, ADHD kids working there because they're really passionate about helping. And it's a great way for them to get their emotions out. So that's what I would say. And my big message always is positively. Whatever you talk to an ADHD child, always make out that it's a positive and they can use it as a positive as they grow up. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think a 6-year-old, that's a really good age to start having those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In very simple language, but they can understand it when you say, you're going to feel things a lot, and that's okay. It's okay. We just have to focus it in the right direction. Okay, both my okay, yeah. Look like they're subdued. I'm wrong assuming this is to do with medication. Okay, it won't be subdued. It will be the fact that they can at last focus and concentrate. What people have to remember is with ADHD medication, it's the most efficacious of any medication for anything, psychologically or physiologically. So it doesn't knock your personality. It doesn't take away your creativity. But a lot of people go, oh, but I'm a writer. Oh, but I'm a singer. I can't lose my creativity. You don't. All that's happening with the ADHD meds is you're putting back into the brain something that's missing. So what you might see as subdued is actually that person at last not needing to fidget constantly to stimulate their brain, not needing to tap their leg or do this or fiddle or be doing this with the hair. They might look subdued because finally they can stop doing that to calm their brain, because their brain is now being managed and behaving as it should because it's got the meds in it. So yeah, they might look subdued, but actually what you see as subdued, I now see as a child who's able to concentrate and focus and learn and retain information, which an unmedicated ADHD brain can't, because an ADHD brain doesn't think a thought long enough for it to be stored as a memory. So if you think about schools and revision, us not thinking a thought long enough for it to be stored as a memory, how well does that go down with revision? Nightmare. So subdued just means that their brain now has the correct amount of dopamine and they are functioning as they should. That's my answer to that one.
Okay.
Ignore them.
They've also just added that she is 9 as well, if that gives some context.
Yeah, just ignore them. Ignore them. It's got nothing to do with them. You're the parent and you're responsible for that child. Keeping it in-house actually means let's keep them suffering. That's what it means. Keep them suffering. And the reason they're saying that is because it costs them money to have kids in school with ADHD, ASD, all the rest of it. Ignore them. That if you hear that sentence again, actually hear it as, we just want to keep her suffering. We just want to keep her not focusing, not concentrating, not being able to sit still, not being able to retain information, doing worse in her exams, being impulsive, possibly compulsive, so maybe overeating, getting fat. There's 100 reasons why getting a child diagnosed and medicated is good for the child, probably more than 100. I could probably come up with 200. So keeping it in-house doesn't exist. If that child is ADHD, they need to be diagnosed. They potentially need to be medicated if they can, if we can find the right meds for them, and that is going to transform their life. So there's no such thing as keeping ADHD in-house. No, that makes me really angry, that statement, because what they're in actual fact saying is, shall we just keep her suffering? Shall we just keep her not being able to learn and impulsively losing her friends and compulsively eating 3 school dinners? And let's really make her suffer, shall we? Because it suits us and our numbers. No, you do not keep it in-house. You can't keep ADHD in-house. You keep it between you, your GP, the psychiatrist, the psychologist. It's nothing to do with the school, whether a child is diagnosed and medicated. Nothing to do with the school. They might think it is, but it's not.
This is a really interesting one, because obviously a lot of the sort of processes for diagnosis does sort of stem from what the school's perspective is.
Well, it does. It doesn't. It doesn't. We've had my company, Head Stuff ADHD Therapy. We work with parents all over the country. Primarily, these parents have just that. They've been knocked back by schools who said, "Oh, we'll deal with it in house. Oh, she's perfectly fine here. We'll manage it." And the parents are like, "No," because they can see what's going on at home. They can see how the child is struggling, can't do their homework, kicking their brother, whatever. And what you need to do then, if you've got a school who won't see the ADHD or genuinely don't, because they don't know what they're looking for most of the time, you need to get your confirmation of their condition elsewhere. I'll give you a very, very quick story because I don't want to overrun for you. Therapist of mine, grandson, school would not see the ADHD. He got to 14, 15. They were tearing their hair out. When I saw him, I worked out he got everything. ADHD, ASD, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. He'd already had a knee replacement, age 12, and several of the Ds, the dyspraxias, dyscalculias, all of those. So what we did was a report. We sent it to the paediatrician. The paediatrician then sent the school a questionnaire. The school sent it back to him, and he said, "This contradicts absolutely everything Head Stuff have said." So I get the mother, the granny who's on my team, in floods of tears onto me going, "Sarah, he's not going to get his diagnosis." I said, "Yes, he, pardon my French, bloody well is." I said, "We get those forms sent back to the school, and this time you sit in that meeting with the school and you make sure they fill it in correctly," which happened, and he got his diagnosis. So there are ways round schools that don't see it. There are ways round schools. So don't give up on the child just because the school doesn't see it. The school is not the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-everything. No, not at all. Most of them are very poorly educated in ADHD. We're doing our very best. We're training schools literally every week. But the ones that don't see it, no. The teachers are not, then they are not the person to say whether a child should be diagnosed or medicated. It's not up to the teachers. You're in charge as the parent, and you liaise with the paediatrician and the GP. And as I say, if you can't get the school to fill the paperwork in, noticing all the things are true, then you sit with the school when they do it. And we've done that in 2 cases now, and it's worked in both. The child has then got their diagnosis.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Got another question about meds.
A
little bit of a theme here.
Okay. Yeah, meds. Okay. Meds is a big old subject. The one thing I will say is don't give up. There are so many different medications. For starters, you've got stimulant and non-stimulant. Then within stimulant, you've got short-acting and long-acting. Then within that, you've got methylphenidate and amphetamine. So there are literally hundreds of variations of ADHD meds that you can actually take. So my big message with medication is do not give up. Keep trying until you find the right one. I've met thousands of client parents who go, "Oh yeah, we tried it years ago and it was rubbish and it lost his appetite and he hated taking it and now he's in trouble with the police." So never give up trying to get a child on the right ADHD medication is my big message. But I hear you when you say you're struggling to get it changed. I totally hear you. Everybody knows, I think now, that NHS services, especially with ADHD, but NHS services in general, are absolutely overwhelmed. They are not coping, God love them. They are trying to train more people up to diagnose and assess for ADHD, but it's a bit of a slow process because ADHD is such a specific thing. If you can afford it, go private. If you can afford it, go and find somebody to do a medication review. That's what you need. You don't need another assessment. You need a medication review. And you can ring around or go on some of the Facebook groups. They're brilliant for finding out who's got the best, who's got the cheapest and good paediatricians. You're looking at very roughly 200 quid. I did hear somebody the other day that said it was 150. We've got somebody, I can even give you the name. It's written down somewhere. Where's it written down? Oh, God. It's somebody in Southampton. Who do medication reviews for £150. So we're always trying to find out who's good and who does them cheaper. But if you're struggling on the NHS, understand that they're just swamped. And for a child, I would say it's worth, if you can beg, borrow, steal, credit card it, it's worth it, because, you know, it can transform how the child feels and performs at school. So a medication review is what you need there.
Brilliant. So again,
what's a good age to go on meds? That's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is when the child is first struggling. That's just the meds because of the ASD. Okay, I hear you. I think that's a bit of a strange one. There's a lot of people diagnosed with ADHD and ASD. A third of my therapists are. They're all on meds for their ADHD. You don't really wait to see how the ASD impacts. You can still medicate the ADHD.
I could use it. My son's 13. He's got co-diagnosis and he's been on ADHD meds since he was 5. And it has transformed his life.
Exactly.
But there's no contraindication that we see.
There's a little bit of, there's a lot of misinformation about there. We hear the most random things that doctors say about, oh, they've got ASD, therefore we're not going to medicate the ADHD, or like that. We've got to wait to see how it impacts. I mean, it's ridiculous. The ADHD is not going anywhere. You know, you need the ADHD medicated as soon as possible. You can't medicate for ASD, very, very rarely. So that's not going to change. You know, they're still going to have the ASD and they're still going to have the ADHD. So I think that clinician needs a bit of maybe stuff run off the internet, you know, or get an ADHD therapist to go with you to the next meeting to explain that they need the meds for the ADHD irrespective of the ASD or whatever other co-diagnosis they've got. There's a lot of other things that they could have as well, but the ADHD isn't going anywhere. Doesn't recognise ADHD in girls. Oh, we've had this. Oh God. Buy my book, basically.
This is why we're here.
Yeah. You tell them to go and do some more training very politely, and you run something off the internet about ADHD in girls, and you pop it in their hand. That's how you deal with it. But I hear you. We had a client, it must be rocking on for 4 or 5 months ago now, lovely girl, age 32, who had sat in front of her doctor the week before and who had said to her, you cannot have ADHD, you're a girl. And then she came to me and I, 2-hour session with me, screaming ADHD. We then sent her to the private psychiatrist who diagnosed her. We then sent that letter to the doctor and said, please go and do some training. You know, it's dangerous what you're saying. What makes me angry about this is that people who say you can't have ADHD in girls, that girl is, because she's not diagnosed and medicated, she's at higher risk of self-harm and suicide because of an ignorant doctor. This is why I'm so passionate and I'm very gobby and I won't shut up, because by saying things like that, that doctor doesn't realise he's just made that girl a safeguarding risk because she's not being accepted for having ADHD. So shout and shout more and run stuff off the internet, give it to them and say, I'm sorry, but you're wrong, quite dangerously wrong, actually. So can we now crack on with this? It's infuriating, but I think I'm sure it's in my parents' book about, yes, you can be a girl. I'm 51 and I was 51 and I was a girl and I was diagnosed with moderate severe combined. The other thing that infuriates me is people thinking that inattentive ADHD is just for girls. Absolute rubbish. There are so many boys with inattentive ADHD, hundreds of them. My brother, he's diagnosed. We've got different dads. We've inherited the ADHD from our own dads. So there's so much misinformation about there. Your very best friend is the internet. Go and run off, not just articles, but official papers that have been written by doctors and psychiatrists about ADHD in girls. Go and whack that in front of them. They can't deny that.
I have to pull this comment up because
go on.
I've had this many times before.
Yes. Oh, yes. We've had loads. Yeah, this is going to have to be the last one because I've got a horrible meeting to go to with the solicitor. 100% you'll get that. You can't have ADHD. You've got a degree. wait for it, we've had, you can't have ADHD because you can read a book. Yeah. We've had, you can't have ADHD, you've got a PhD, master. I've got therapists way brighter than me. They've got masters, they've got PhDs, you know, they're phenomenal. But you'll hear it. Yeah, you can't have ADHD because you're a girl, because you can read a book, because you've been to university, because you've got a degree. You'll hear it all. And this is where I say that the internet is your best friend. Go and run off articles that prove that to be wrong, proper medical paper articles, slap it in front of the person and say, perhaps a little bit of continuing professional development training wouldn't go amiss here, because if you're giving that wrong information out to me, I worry you're giving it out to other people. You know, it's people like us who've got ADHD and are here and understanding it and know about it. We have to change this world. It's no good keeping it quiet. You know, we have to tell these people, this is what you need to do. You need more training. You need to read this book or that book. Delivered from Distraction is a brilliant book to give to adults. It's only $10 on Amazon. I buy it and give it to people all the time. I'm constantly giving it to psychiatrists who don't believe in ADHD and going, read that. He's a psychiatrist with ADHD. So push out the information. It's all there online. You've just got to get it and give it to the people that need it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I also could have a conversation for hours and hours. And obviously we advocate for the same when we're adults with ADHD, women. But I'm just going to leave with a little bit for parents. You are your child's voice. You are the advocate. You know them the best. So do continue to push.
100%.
Thank you for your time today, Sarah. The recording will be available to everybody that's on here today, so I'll send that to you probably next week. And I know you mentioned that you might have some information about I was just nearly went blank. The medication review. Yeah. So if you do,
I'll try and find it. If I can find it, I'll let you know. I'm going to have to leave you, everybody. I'm really sorry.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Barrister at 3, so I've got to go. But thanks so much for coming, and I hope it's been vaguely helpful. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.